Hello everyone. In today's lecture, we will see how to connect with MySQL in Java Web Application. So basically JDBC in Java Web Application. Today we will make one user authentication application, right? To make this application, we need MySQL software. You can install MySQL. It's very easy to install and you can use any IDE to connect with your MySQL. And Java, right? And we also need JDBC connector, which will connect Java code with our MySQL. So these are the prerequisites for this tutorial. So what would be the flow? We would have, let's say, index.html on which we will provide login form. And then we can submit this form to some servlet, right? Let's say auth servlet. In auth servlet, we would call user data object class. So in user data access object, we have to get connection, MySQL connection, right? So it means that we need one class for MySQL connection as well. In user DAO, right, we have to create one select statement. Then we will execute that statement. And on the basis of that, we would return result. In our case, it would be true or false, right? Result to auth server. We will send back result to the auth server, right? Then servlet will decide the next flow. Okay, let's say if true, then go to home.jsp page, else we can go to some error.jsp page. So this is a basic flow of this user authentication web application in Java. And obviously before starting, we have to create one table in MySQL, right? So we have to create one table in your database. So we can quickly create one table. I'm using table plus IDE to connect with MySQL version 8. And from here you can see that tables, right? So we have to select, first of all, we have to select database. Here it's CT2104. So we can create a new table from here. named as users, and column name, instead of ID we can say that user name, right? And data type would be varchar, right? String. Other field could be password, and data type would be again varchar. So we have to define its primary key, and here we will say username would be the primary key. So yeah, very basic table. Then we can commit our changes to this table, and we have one table, users. So in this table we can add data from here. So let's say username is admin, password is again admin, root admin. So I'm just adding few entries. So right, we have, let's say, 4 users, or we can add one more. Okay, then I will commit these thing. So now this is a part of users table. So all set for SQL. So now we will go to NetBeans. We will add JDBC connector, right? And basically it's a jar file. You can download it from the internet. So I will create a new project, Java web application. Project name could be user auth. That's fine. Version is fine. And finish. So by default we got one index.html file, right? Now we have to add our jar file, JDBC jar file. So we can add from here, libraries, add jar folder. So I have to add this one. Okay. So we can run this very simple project. So basic output, the default one. Okay, so in Java, what we have done, we have created new project, we have connected or we have added our jar file in Java in our project. Now we have to do this thing, right? So I can summarize how many files do we need. First file is index.html, right? I need one servlet, right? I also need one data access object. Let's say user.java. In user.java, I also need MySQL connection. .java. And after the authentication, if all thing went well, right, then this auth servlet will forward our response to, let's say, home.jsp. Otherwise, we will show some login invalid error or something, right, on error.jsp. So in total, we need these 6 files, right? So functionality for each file is very simple. Here, one login form, right? In auth servlet.java, we would be getting form data, right? And asking user DAO.java about the authentication, right? In user DAO, we will get connection, or more specifically MySQL connection, right? We will get MySQL connection from this file, and then execute one query. So after execution, we will send results back to authservlet.java, right? So here we will get and decide on the basis of results, right? Like we have to forward our response to home.jsp or error.jsp. So in MySQL connection.java file, we have to provide IP address of MySQL server, and username and password, port number, which is usually 3306, and database name. And in home.jsp, we will be simply displaying message that you are at your home page. It could be just like your Facebook home page, right? Or any dashboard or any login. So on error.jsp, we can display an error that username password is not correct. So we need these 6 files. Index.html, so we can simply create login. Here we can simply create one form, right? Form action would be, here we have to provide servlet name. In our case, it would be auth servlet, right? Method would be post, and then we can simply add one input type text, name would be user ID, right? Then I can add one line break, then input type is password, name is pswd, input type equals to submit, so login. So one form is ready, right? This one we can test. Yeah, that's fine. Or we can add labels as well, username, password, right? So now we can enter username and password, and we can press login, and on submission this information will go to the servlet named as auth servlet, right? We have to create this servlet, so we can create new servlet named as auth servlet. That's fine. We have to add information in web.xml. So here first step is that we have to get response, right, or form data. So string let's say user ID is equals to request dot get parameter. It should be same, this should be same as this one. Okay, this could be different, no problem. So let me copy paste so that I can use it for password. pswd, pswd, and here I will say again pswd. Okay, so first step is done about auth servlet.java, this thing, right? So after this we need this Java code, but in this Java code we would be requiring another class of MySQL connection.java. So I would say we will create this class first. Okay, in which we have to provide MySQL details, username, password, right? So I will create one Java class, and it could be named as MySQL connection, right? And package would be model, right? It's just a folder. So MySQL connection, that's fine. So you can see in source packages there is one folder model in which we have MySQL connection.java. That's why we are mentioning this thing, that packages model. So class is here, so I can create, or I need one connection, java.sql connection, right? So I can create its constructor as well, insert code, constructor, and then I have to create one method, right? Public, which will return that connection. So its return type would be connection. Public connection name would be get connection, let's say. So we have to return one connection, which would be that one. So I can simply write return this dot connect, right? And we can use try and catch, because if there would be an error then we can easily get that thing, right? So catch exception p dot print stack trace, that's fine. So here we need information about MySQL server. So first information is like what is the IP address. So we have to define IP address, right? And in our case it could be localhost or 127.0.0.1, right? Then string port number would be 3306. Then we have to provide database name. In our case it is CT-2104. What else? Port, IP address, right? MySQL username, yeah, and similarly string MySQL username, password, pswd. So username for my local host is Mustafa1234 and password is root. So I can make another string named as dburl, right, which will start with JDBC, MySQL. Then I will concatenate my IP address variable, right? Then it needs port number. Then I will add my database. I can also mention like I am using SSL or not. So I will say this thing, right? Use SSL is equals to false, that I am not using SSL for this sort of connection. So this is my DB URL, JDBC colon MySQL colon slash slash. Then I have to provide my IP address, port number, and then database name. And I have to tell that I wouldn't be using, or this connection wouldn't be using SSL. Another important thing that we have to mention is the name of the driver. So class dot for name, here I will say the name of the driver, which is com.java.mysql.driver, right? After that I have to get connection. So this dot connect is equals to driver manager dot get connection. And you can see here we have to provide three things: string URL, which is this one, DB URL, right? Then string user, so it would be that one, and then string password, MySQL password. Okay, so driver manager dot get connection, DB URL is fine, so it automatically detected that these three variables would be here. We are done with this connection thing. After this thing is successful, it would be returned to any class that would be calling that MySQL connection class. So you can see very simple code, like we have to provide all credentials about our MySQL server, right? Then we have to mention that which driver we are going to use, and then simply we are calling driver manager dot get connection, and we are giving DB URL, this one, and then username and password of MySQL. So now we can create DAO, user DAO, right? User data access object. In model, we can go again and we can say Java class, name as user data access object. Package would be model again, right? So this is our user data access object, right? In this class, we can simply create its constructor, right? And then we need one function. I would say public boolean is user info correct. So basically this is the function that authentication server would be using, okay, here. So from here it will call that user data access object, and it will forward user ID and password to here, and then we will check through MySQL that this username password exists or not. String, let's say user ID, string pswd. So we can define one boolean variable, boolean info correct is equals to false, and we can return that value, info correct, right? So first step is we have to get connection from MySQL connection.java. I will create one object of MySQL connection class, MySQL connection let's say MySQL name as equals to new MySQL connection again. Okay, so object is here. Now I will call this method, right? This one, get connection. So connection, I would say connect is equals to MySQL C dot get connection java.sql. That's fine. Okay, as we are using MySQL connection and all the stuff, so it is a good practice to add try and catch code here. Catch exception. So we can place this here. So after all working, we have to close this connection, right? Connect dot close. So one step is completed. Now we have to create a statement. So I need statement stmt connect dot create statement, right? You have to import java.sql.statement. Even I can type fast here as well. After the statement, I will create one result set. Result get rs equals to new statement dot execute query, right? Here we will write our query. So query would be very simple, like we have to select static. This static means select all fields from the table. Select static from table name. Table name would be users, right? This should be same as this one, users. Here we have two fields, username and password. So we will say select static from users. Then we want filter results on the basis of criteria that we are sending user ID and password. So username should be equals to this user ID, right? And password should be equals to this pswd. So we will execute this query in a result set, and if that result set is empty, then it means that this username and password is not correct. But if we have some results in the result set, right, then we can simply say that okay, this username exists with this password. So I will say while result set dot next, I will check this loop will run. So this loop will only run if the authentication, if that particular username and password exists in the table users. So if control flow comes here, then it means that this info correct should be true, right? Else, obviously, it will close the connection and it will return false value to the authentication server. So I can save this file. So in auth server, I have to create one object of user DAO. User DAO is equals to new user DAO, right? I have to import this file. So after that, I can simply put one condition that user dot is user info correct, right? Here this user ID and password will go, and if it comes true, then this statement would be true, right? Then this code will run, else I have to forward user to some error page, right? Or for re-login something or register something. So here I can simply say that request dot get request dispatcher, right? Here let's say home.jsp, then forward request response. So here I can say error.jsp. So I can quickly create two JSP files. One is home.jsp, in which I would say, let's say, welcome to your home page. Okay. And then I can create another JSP error. And here I can say that your provided info is not correct. So I can simply link it to index.html again for the login thing, right? Okay. Now we can run our web application. So we have done all steps, right? Okay. So we can run our web application. So in users, we have admin. So you can see password is correct. So that's why we are at the home.jsp page, right? So if password is not correct, let's say admin and this one, right? Password is not correct. So flow shouldn't go to home.jsp. Instead, it will go to error.jsp. So you can see your provided info is not correct. Want to. So we can re-enter username, or we can ask user to register.